Welcome to another episode of the Milwaukee Sports Performance Podcast. My name is Michael Falk, and I am joined today by Ty Peccioli, who is the pitching coordinator and then head strength coach at the Milwaukee HALOs baseball club. Ty had an extensive baseball playing career through college and then even into some lower levels of professional baseball before he got into coaching full time. So, Ty, thank you so much for taking the time to share some baseball and pitching info today.
Yeah, Mike, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I always like to just start with a little bit of background on, I think everyone has a baseball story or journey, and I'd love to just hear kind of what your baseball path was and how you ended up as a pitching coach and strength coach now.
Yeah, so I mean, I won't make it too long, but always kind of wanted to get into coaching, just didn't know kind of how. I went to Marion University up in Fond du Lac, played there for 4 years as an arm. I went to school for kinesiology, but like I said, didn't really know what I wanted to do with it. Um, Never really thought about playing ball after college. It wasn't really, I mean, being a Division III guy, you never really think of it. Then I had a pretty solid senior year. Velo started to jump. Things became a little more realistic. Again, nothing's guaranteed. So you kind of got to just, just say, let's just see what happens here. So that summer after college in 2019, I played down the Prospect League. Had a really good throwing coach, pitching coach that kind of just taught me a ton that I really needed help with. Saw another velo jump that summer, and then things started to get more realistic, I guess. And then COVID hit the following spring, and I'm sure we all remember, like, nobody knew what was going on. I mean, we didn't. Nothing was guaranteed, so I just kind of built a little gym in my garage. Me and my girlfriend, we were living in the middle of nowhere, kind of built a net, little weight room, and just kind of got after it, I guess. And honestly, that was the biggest kind of, I want to say, built the most character for me, just kind of doing it by myself. Um, anyway, so then that later on, again, COVID was weird. So it was like really 8 to 10 months of doing that. And then I had a league reach out to me on Twitter, the California Winter League, and they just said, like, hey, we've seen video of you. We want to come out and throw in front of some scouts. And I was fortunate enough to go out there in the winter of 21. And then I was fortunate enough for the Schaumburg Boomers to see me and kind of take a shot on me. So I went to spring training with them, played like a month there that summer, ended up getting released. And I just said, all right, well, I can either hang them up or just keep going. And then that summer of 21, I found a place called Prime Athletics down in Grayslake, Illinois, which is kind of where I'm from. I had two guys there, DJ and John Snelton, brothers, that kind of helped me a lot. And that was really the first time I had like an organized routine lifting, throwing program. And I just kind of fell in love with it right away. I had a plan every day. And I had a really good off season with them. The numbers I wanted started to become a lot easier on the radar gun with kind of all the work I put in with them. So I was feeling really good. Um, so that winter, I think it was the winter of 22. I had a back injury that I was kind of ignoring throughout college, and I kind of was an idiot about it. I just kept going. Just said I'll be fine. It'll go away. Didn't go away. Actually got progressively worse. I started to have leg pain down that sciatic nerve. Um, and finally, I needed to go get an MRI right before the following season for independent ball that year. And my surgeon was like, dude, your back is shot. And it's funny because the leg pain like just completely took over so bad that I didn't even feel it in my back anymore. So I ended up having surgery. It was an L4, L5 slip disc. And guys that have been through that know it's awful. I couldn't walk. I mean, I just, let alone throwing a baseball, I couldn't even move. So I had surgery in May, right before the season. And I was at a big crossroads. I really didn't know, like part of me was like, it'll be fine, go back out there. The other part of me was like, all right, the back is no joke. Even my surgeon was like, you're really never going to be the same. And then around that time when I started to heal, I found the Midwest Halos. I kind of walked in here. I met Cody, the owner, and he was nice enough to take a shot on me right away with really hardly knowing me. And then that started out as kind of a part-time pitching guy, turned into full-time pitching guy. And then a couple months in, we were talking about like strength coach. And, like I said, I always wanted to pursue it, just didn't really know how. And then I spent the last year getting my CSCS, which, was tough, but at the same time, like it needed to be done. And very happy that I got that done. And, now looking back on it, like you live and you learn, no regrets. Would love to keep playing a little longer, but I think things worked out for the best.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. I think that's a really good story for a couple of things. I mean, I've got so many kids in here rehabbing with us that because of their interest in the body and pitching and doing something, and they're learning about injuries and stuff. A lot of them go into sports science or kines as a major when they go play somewhere. And just to hear, what that path is like for, we get that a lot. Like, I'm not exactly sure what I want to do with it. Like maybe PT school, maybe strength coach, maybe pitching coach. And I'm like, yeah, getting your kines degree is like awesome. Cause then you've got, wide open. Like you become a surgeon, you could become, you can do whatever you want as you get a little bit older, and it's good degree to get. So I think that's awesome. And I really love your story of the development, because I just wish more young players would hear that, just because you're not throwing where you are your sophomore year, like you don't have to be, that's not, you're going to keep getting better. Like you're a sophomore, and like, just hearing that, like, hey, even after college, you saw some of the biggest jumps of your career, like almost once you were done playing college ball, that helps you keep going and making the professional ranks. I think is just a really good message for kids that maybe aren't where they want to be right now in their development journey, but that doesn't mean it's done.
Absolutely. I mean, development does not happen overnight. You got to kind of trust yourself. And I mean, there's many times where that I wasn't happy with where I was at, even in the middle of my training. And you just got to kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel and just keep rolling. And I mean, you'll know when your time is done, but as long as you can go out with a bang and just think to yourself, I did everything I could. I mean, you're feeling okay walking away at the end of the day.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. That's awesome. Okay. So I just want to take a step back and kind of look big picture, 20,000 square foot view. Um, I've seen this a lot in just the 6 years that I've been very involved in baseball, of an increasing number of pitching coaches that are also very involved in the strength and conditioning side. And obviously, it's something that we believe in, that, your body is really going to influence what you're able to do on the mound. But I'd love to hear kind of from your perspective how pitching coach and strength coach tie together, and like some of the benefits of kind of wearing both hats.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think no matter what kind of athlete you are, you're going to get benefit out of the weight room. I mean, I think obviously easy answer, every athlete should lift. But it really builds character. I mean, the weight room is something I didn't really adjust to until college, until I was kind of forced to be there. But like looking back on it, it's like, man, I should have done this in high school. And I think part of it too is just not having an organized plan. Like everyone's got a first day in the weight room. Most guys, let's be honest, most guys walk in that weight room for the first time and you're scared. You don't know what you're doing. So I think the way pitching and strength coach tie in together, I mean, mass is gas, right? Like you look at any big league arm that's 95 plus, they're roughly around 210, 220. I mean, unless you're on the lighter side, you have to be an elite mover. But again, like I said, everyone can benefit from the weight room. I think and I'm a big mechanical guy, a big throwing program guy, but those are only kind of pieces to the puzzle. If you're just relying strictly on mechanics and throwing programs, like you're going to gain some, but if you have that long-term goal, it's really hard to get there without the weight room. And like I said, it just builds character. It makes you love the journey, really. Then another thing too is like I can tell when a guy, like a young guy especially, the way he, his lateral movements down the mound, you can probably tell they haven't squatted before. They haven't done any kind of hinge movement, which is expected, right? Like most young kids don't have that mobility yet, that idea of the move. But like lateral movement, stabilization, fast twitch muscles, all that kind of stuff. Like not only are you building your body to generate, more velocity, but you're doing it in a healthier way. you can do it. Like, obviously you're going to have struggles with it, but as long as you can keep chasing that weight goal,
Yeah.
or chasing that med ball number, like that's when you'll see those gains in the weight room, and then it's just a matter of time of putting it together on the mound.
Yeah. No, I think that's awesome. And it kind of leads me right into my like the next thing that I wanted to think about is and get your philosophy on is like, because we get this a lot with parents or kids, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you know, like for pitchers to improve and throw harder, is it the weight room? Is it mechanics? Is it like they just got 2 years older and they're throwing harder? Like how's that interplay work together, right? Because I mean, there's basketball players or football players that can deadlift a house that can't throw 55 off the mound, right? So like,
Right.
I'd just be kind of curious what you see that interplay with in terms of someone that's trying to throw a little bit harder.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, all those things kind of make are all kind of pieces to the puzzle. The weight room, throwing, and I think just naturally getting older, like these kids from, especially in our case, we're working with mostly high school guys. Those kids from 15 to 16, they're naturally just going to jump. Like, whether it's 2 to 3 miles an hour, like their bodies are growing, they're naturally going to get some of that velo.
Yep.
But like I said, I mean, you gotta lift weights. I mean, especially if you want to have that long term goal of like nowadays 90, like I want to be 90, I want to be 90. Okay, well, it's not just getting big. It's not just a throwing program. It's like, yeah, like we want all our guys to get big, of course, but I use the example of my guys. I'm like, do you ever see a bodybuilder throw a baseball? It's just not like, it doesn't work, right? Like, they're strong. They can, like you said, they can lift a house, but you got to have a happy mix of speed training, agility training, mobility. A lot of my guys towards the end of the off season, they're in a power phase. So like all winter, we were lifting to get heavy, to get strong. And then right as like the season approaches, we start to shift towards like velocity based training, like 5 sets of 2 of explosive stuff. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it's like there's a happy mix to all of them. But like I said, you just got to kind of stay on the grind and just go through a lot of failure, a lot of trial and error, but just keep the train moving, stay on the gas, and keep switching up programming too. I mean, a lot of guys, at least in my case, when I first started being the strength coach, I can't give the same guy the same lift for 2 months. I mean, a lot of my guys, we change every month, every 4 weeks. Some of the stuff may be similar, but there's a new goal. There's a new short-term goal every month.
Yeah. No, I think that's awesome. And I mean, there's so many ways that people can add variability or kind of hidden at it. It's like, sometimes I think everyone thinks like, oh, I got to change the exercises. It's like, well, sometimes you change the exercises, but maybe do the same exercise with a different weight. Like you're just,
Exactly.
yeah, we just went heavy with deadlifts last month. And now this month we're going light with deadlifts and trying to move it as fast as you can, or, the
Exactly.
movements are similar. But the intent really changes. No, I think it's
Absolutely.
awesome. It's just a good perspective. I kind of joke that like, I think strength coaches really need to like rebrand to be like performance coaches. Cause like, I think we have
Yeah.
like the shaved head, like no neck, meathead kind of vision when you hear strength coach. And it's like, no, there's a
Yeah.
lot more nuance to it.
Right.
In today's day and age, and I think you have a really good perspective there. So when you get a new pitcher, and I'll let you kind of pick your age of when you usually start with kids, but obviously, like you said, you're kind of taking them from at some point in younger ages through high school, right? So you're trying to,
Yeah.
for the most part, help kids get to college. Um, I'd love to hear just a little bit about what how you see pitchers develop and like what your philosophy would be to take them from I kind of get them at X and we're going to get to Y. Like, what does that process look like?
So yeah, I mean, that's a great question. So like usually with most of my guys, I'll have them kind of tell me like a long-term goal and then a short-term goal, with the understanding that we can't just look at that long-term goal. Like, I like for them to tell me what their long-term goal is, even if it's something that's so like maybe not obtainable right away, but
Yeah.
like kind of shoot for the moon. And then,
Yep.
those short-term goals in between kind of lead us up to those long-term goals. So getting them to understand like it doesn't happen overnight, and getting them to get like, all right, we got to start here. And I tell them, I'm like, hey, I'm gonna put you through a lot of uncomfortable stuff, but you got to become uncomfortable to get comfortable. And if it's be a lot of failure, a a lot of trial and error, but we're going to keep going. We're going to keep progressing. So I guess one big thing I look at from a mechanical standpoint is how they move out of their peak leg lift. So I hardly change a lot of guys' leg kicks unless it's something totally off. But to me, and this is something that I learned from my guys training me in the past, was that lateral movement. And the first thing I kind of look at is that a first initial move towards home plate, and then the big key, the big staple for most of my guys is how they use that back hip, how they load. I mean, us pitchers, we're working down an angle. And if we're not riding our back hip, we're not loading our back hip, we're just going to fall forward, shift our weight. And then that's when you get that kind of, cliche thing like pushy arm. I mean, it's true, but at the same time, like a lot of our errors later in the drive phase or later in the throwing motion stem from the back hip. So that's one thing I look at. And now maybe a lot of guys aren't ready. If I get like a 13 or a 14-year-old, like, yeah, maybe we're not worrying about that back hip right away. But I guess my last point is like center of mass, like drawing that midline through the body, being able to like stay upright, not slouch forward, not shift your weight forward, and doing it at the right time. Like I know a lot of people say, well, pitchers are supposed to accelerate forward. It's like, yeah, absolutely. But things got to happen first in order for that movement to be stable, through the throw. So like things like back hip load, pelvis rotation, arm path is something, especially for my young guys, like getting a clean arm path. I mean, we're of course trying to train velocity, train a healthy pitcher, but it's got to be done the right way. It's got to be done with, the way the body's supposed to throw. In my opinion, my philosophy, it's like if we can get these injury prone things out of the way right now, we're going to be able to down the line, we'll be able to chase velocity when we want to. But right now, we're not really worried about velocity. We got to get those mechanics down, master them, and then we can chase a number.
Yeah, that's awesome. So to be kind of fair to say, and just listening to you a little bit, are you kind of in the camp that I see with a lot of pitching coaches that like, I think a lot of parents want to go right to like, oh, his arm path is funky or something like that. And more and more of the pitching coaches that I talk to are almost like the arm path can sometimes be a symptom of what's going on in the lower half, like where it's the visual end result that the arm path doesn't look great, but it's because of something that's happening earlier. Is that fair to say for a lot of the kids you work with, or do you kind of see them going hand in hand?
Very fair to say, and honestly hit the nail right on the head. I mean, I've seen guys that have a very, very live arm. Like you see them playing catch and things are just clicking, but then they get on the mound, they don't use that lower half. The arm speeds up too fast, even though their arm's great. It's just, and then, they're like, my arm hurts. Well, it's like, of course, because you're not using anything to protect it. One thing I kind of try to tell my guys is like, your arm's just along for the ride. I mean, everything's got to happen underneath to set your arm up in a very good spot to just throw like you always kind of have been. But now we're doing it a different way. We're depending more on our back hip, our back heel, pelvis rotation, trunk acceleration, stuff like that to make the arm just along for the ride.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So if those are kind of the mechanical changes that you make the most with like back hip, lower half stuff, kind of cleaning up center of gravity, and then ultimately getting the arm pass synced up and timed up with that. When you see a player that is doing one of those things or some of those things wrong, how do you actually go about making a mechanical change? Because I see a lot of kids in our office that'll just be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do this differently, and then they're like, and then I've got a game in 3 days. I'm like, I'm not sure it's quite that simple. So like, what does a mechanical like change process look like for you with a player over a period of time?
So yeah, great question. So like, I'm a huge video guy. I mean, you got to take video. You got to be able to slow the movement down. And I think one thing that I didn't have growing up, and when we had phones, we had I'm 26. We had the phones, but we didn't video as much as we do now. And like me being a very visual learner, I never really saw myself do something. I mean, you got to see yourself from a third person perspective. I mean, there's many times where I tell a guy like, "Hey, dude, you're not using your back hip," and they're like, "Well, I feel like I am." And then you show them a video, and they're like, "Oh, like I'm not."
Yeah.
And so I think having video and like like really documenting the video and like what I do is I send my guys video after lessons every time, and we have it, and we can always look back on it. We can see the growth, and then I tell them too, like most guys see me once a week. I'm like, keep this in your phone. Look at it when I mean I know you kids before bed you're on TikTok, you're on your phone. Like study yourself a little bit. I mean you have to really become addicted to this stuff outside of when you're supposed to be here in order to get where you want to be. I mean if it was this easy, everybody would throw 90.
Yeah.
So I think a big piece is number one having video, and more importantly like doing work away from what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Just because you have to do it doesn't make it always great. Like we have to study ourselves away from the facility, away from throwing, and just kind of have that short-term goal, like I talked about earlier. Like, I guess a big thing for me is when a kid's like, "Hey, like I see it now, I get it, I'm learning it." Even though they're not doing it yet, they understand what we're trying to do, and then from that point, it's just a matter of time before it cleans itself up.
Yeah. I think that's really good. How do you balance like, you need repetitions with this new, like with these new motions. Like how do you balance like not overthrowing with
Mhm.
like how do the kids get the reps and the time? Are you big like lots of drills or just more on mound rep, or how do you kind of go about that process?
So I think, I mean, RPE is a big thing, right? Like it's going to be based on intensity. Like you're not going to have a kid do the same drills 4 days in a row on the same intensity. It's just unrealistic.
Yeah.
So I try to have my guys do like one high intent day a week. Let's just say we're in the off season, one high intent live day. And then like everything in between is going to be like an off day, a recovery day, which is like, you're doing the same kind of motions, but just at 50, 60%, keep it light. And then about midweek, I'll have them do a long toss day, play around with weighted balls, play around with like the new stuff we're learning. But the one kind of rule I have is like on your live days, you can't think, you just got to go. And the video is going to tell us what we're struggling with. The number is going to tell us it's instant feedback.
Yeah.
So we're seeing where the flaws stick out. But a lot of my guys too, like throughout the week, when they have those light days where they're not really worrying about much, they're just like going through the motions super lightly. Um, to me, those are the days they gain the most because they have time to think. But like I said, on those live days, don't think. Put all your hard work, put it together, see what happens, and then we'll reassess next week on what went wrong, what went well.
Yeah. No, I think that's really good. I think it's a process that kids don't fully understand. I'll link in an episode, or really two episodes, but that we recorded with a couple of the pro pitchers that we work with. And so one of them during his TJ rehab, he would play a game, and he wore like a pulse sensor sleeve for his throwing program to like track his workloads. And he'd play a game with
Yeah,
himself on his low effort days of like how many throws could he get with the plyo balls and stay under his like it's supposed to be, whatever, 2 or 3 units of work. And you
right.
just see like how many of these low intensity reps can I get? I think his record was like 200, like just like super
Gee.
low, like effort throwing. So his arm speeds were very low, but he really got to like get those reps. And we had another one that was working with a pitching guy, and he had really committed to like he needed to change his arm action because of coming out of Tommy John. He just gotten back to the big leagues, but he kind of picked up some habits that he was just getting hurt a lot. And don't quote me on the time, but literally for I want to say it was like 6 or 8 weeks, almost 2 months. He did nothing but the 10 toes drill every single day. He didn't step into a throw. He didn't get on a mound, and he like worked up to he's throwing 10 out of 10 intensity some days, not every day, with this 10 toes drill for like
Yeah,
an
right.
extended period of time. And I just see like some high school kids are just kind of like, oh yeah, I like I'm playing and I'm working on this and I'm gonna go jump on a competitive mound. I'm like, this is not a good idea. Like it's not the place to be doing this. Like it takes time and it takes conscious effort to make physical, like motor learning changes.
Absolutely. And I mean, you guys see that more than I do probably, is just like you have to, like I said, you're gonna have bad days, you're gonna have good days, but like those bad days, like understand failure over and over and over again. Like you're taking those baby steps to get to your long-term goal. Whether it's you're coming back from a UCL injury, you're, like you just said, you're playing around with things like 200 throws a day or 200 throws at low intensity. Like play a little game with yourself, make it fun, but you're still getting your work in, you're still rehabbing yourself, and you're still trying to get back to where you want to be.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So what are some mistakes that you see pitchers make? Like whether they're guys that are working with you that maybe veer off the path, or just kind of looking at other players that maybe aren't working with you that aren't seeing the success. Like if someone's not making progress, or kind of what things are they doing that hinder their development?
So, and I'm going to use myself as an example for this. I think a lot of days, especially with young guys, is you, and I'm guilty of this too. It's like you have to keep your low days low and your high days high. And like even as a player, like I'd be on a low day that day, and I get out to 20 throws, and I'm at a 90 feet, 120 feet, and I'm like, man, I feel really good today. And then you just kind of keep rolling, you let it go, and it's like, no, that's not what the program says. Like you have to stick to what you're doing. Um, and like I said, there's a time and a place where maybe you feel good that day, you can increase intensity a bit. But I think for most of these young guys is like trust in your throwing guy, trust in your coach, whoever it may be, and just sticking to the plan. Because there's a reason there's a low intensity day on a Wednesday to set you up for your live day Saturday or whatever it may be. Um, and I think another thing too with young guys is like they don't throw enough throughout the week, especially guys that don't have like a throwing coach or not everybody has one, and that's fine. But I see a lot of guys too that will throw once a week off the mound, and then it's like, oh, how you feeling, dude? Well, I haven't touched the ball since last week on my last live intent day. It's like, why? We're sitting around for 6 days. Like it's like taking a dead car and sitting in the cold and driving 100 miles an hour and then letting it sit for another week in the cold. It's like the body doesn't work like that. The arm doesn't work like that. So kind of just having that organized plan throughout the week to set you up for that live day, to me, is probably the biggest key point on young arms.
Yeah. I think it should be like mandatory to get that tattooed on every
Right.
player's forearms or something. I'd even
100%.
expand that. The other mistake that we see along the same lines is like that keep the high days high and the low days low extends across everything
Mhm.
that you're doing. Like, so if it's a high day and you're pitching, that should also be your high day lifting after you're done. Otherwise, what we'll see is kids just like
Absolutely.
they just stack like, oh, I'm pitching hard this day, and then I'm lifting hard the next day, and then I'm throwing hard again. And they never get the low day to rest. They just like split the high days up over different days throughout the week, and there's no low days remaining. So
Absolutely.
yeah, like getting your weekly schedule to align with that concept, I think it's some of the lowest hanging fruit for kids to feel better and perform better overall.
Right. You got to optimize recovery time. I mean, you
Yeah.
have to you have to give your body a break once in a while. Usually, I'm one to say like go push yourself, but you got to know when it's time to take that off day. Let your arm rest. Let your body even just rest.
Yeah. That's when the changes happen. Like it's when it
Right.
heals and like you come back stronger. So no, that's awesome. I think that's really good advice. Just to switch gears just a little bit, pitch design. Something that's talked a lot about. Um, it used to be something that was really only professional baseball. Now it's college. Now we're starting to even see it creep more and more into um, lower levels of the sport. I'd be curious, like what your thoughts are around pitch design, especially in youth players. Like, when is too early? When is the right time to start working on that concept? I mean, do we need eighth graders throwing on Rapsodos, or like, are we, is it going too far as we go down there? So I just love to get your 2 cents on the pitch design process.
Yeah. So I don't, and I think every young arm needs to trust their heater. I mean, whether your velo's 55 or 75, because you got nowadays, I mean, you got 13-year-olds touching 91 down in Texas, which is to me is crazy. But some of those guys, you got to understand, like it's just God given ability. So most of these guys, like young guys, I'd say, let's just say a 14-year-old eighth grader, I'd say he's 70, 72, which is very average. Most of them would be like, well, I want to learn a slurve. I want to learn a sinker. It's like, we have to trust the heater first because number one, if you're in a 2-0 count, you're probably not ripping that slider for a strike right away, especially at 14. So I think the biggest thing is getting my guys to trust their fastball, and then we can work off that. I mean, I didn't learn when I was growing up. It was like, you're not supposed to learn a curveball till high school. I think it all depends on the athlete. I mean, and number one thing too for a pitching coach is like, understand every athlete's different. Every guy grows differently. Every arm grows differently. So having the heater is got to be a must. Change up to me is the easiest pitch to learn, the hardest to maintain. And just kind of getting them the idea of like tunneling, like what the fastball does. And if we can have something with spin to offset it, most likely at 14, 15, they're going to be all right. And then obviously the curveball we want to have. And I know a lot of guys are wrapped up nowadays in spin rates, and spin rates are huge. Like a spin rate and a fastball velocity could change your life. But it's got to be done in a healthy manner. I mean, if a young guy has a curveball that kind of just floats through the zone, it's like, well, we don't want it to break that much. We kind of want it to tunnel it so it comes in like a fastball, and then with late break that last second. That's something to me that these younger guys really need to understand is like how to tunnel pitches. And if you can tunnel your pitches, now it's just a matter of time before that spin rate, that velocity jumps up, and then you're showing something off. But in terms of like being successful in an outing, you got to have 2-3 pitches up your sleeve to just keep hitters off balance.
Yeah. No, I think that's good advice. And, I think that to me, that 2-3 pitches is like a nice sweet spot. Like for players, I mean, it's like, I think it's one of those, if you have 6 pitches, do you really have any? Like,
right.
We see so many kids like want to learn all these different things that they see big leaguers throw, but it's like, when you look at it, I mean, especially a major league reliever, like they often have one pitch that they just throw over and over again. That's why they're a reliever, because they just can only get away with that for like one inning. But it's really, really hard to hit.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So would you, I guess, let me throw this out there. If you're working with a kind of younger guy that's developing, is it sort of like, hey, let's get the lower half, the mechanics dialed in. Let's get that arm path like really kind of in a good, like, not that, I mean, mechanics no one's ever perfect, but like into a good solid foundation. And then let's start worrying about the pitch stuff. Or is it like, I just see a lot of kids that like go right to like, oh, I want to learn this new pitch. And it's like, man, you're flying open and you've got like all this other stuff going on. Like maybe let's work on that first. And like, even if you're just throwing fastballs, like throw them better than what you're doing right now.
Absolutely. And like I said, like I'm a big mechanical guy, not even for velocity, but more importantly, like staying healthy. I mean, you see it every day. High school kids, especially this time of year, you're seeing arm guys come in, pitchers come in, and oftentimes it's because they're not worrying about the stuff they need to worry about. They're trying to worry about, well, I want to get my spin rate up to 2,500 RPM. It's like you just said, you're flying open. It just won't happen. We have to get the foundation down, and then we can start doing the fun stuff. Because more importantly, we have to stay healthy. If we're not staying healthy, what good is your spin rate? What good is your velo? So like you just said, cleaning up that arm path, cleaning up proper mechanics has to be a foundation, has to be a staple. And then from that point forward, then we can start chasing a number, spin rate, stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I think that's good to hear. And I wish we could get more people on board with that as a thought process. But
or my life.
You're setting me up perfect, because I wanted to talk about injuries next. I just don't think in 2024 baseball we can avoid talking about injuries as we're talking about velocity and pitcher development. Obviously in the major leagues, there's arms are dropping like flies, and that's what everyone's talking about in the media. I think it's even more concerning, and it sounds like you do too, that we're seeing the younger pitchers dropping like flies too. We had 10 kids in the first 7 days of the high school season that were in our office with sore elbows and shoulders. So I know no one has, if it was as simple as like one answer that we would all, sell it to all of baseball and buy a private island in the Caribbean. So I know we don't have like the perfect answer, but from your perspective, why are we seeing these increasing arm injuries in pitchers?
Well, I mean, and you just kind of hit it right on that. There's no true answer, right? But I guess in my opinion, unfortunately it's the beast of velocity. I mean, the harder you throw, the more prone you are to injury, right? And there's really no way around it, unfortunately. I mean, you see guys at the top level that do everything right. They have the best coaches in the world, the best trainers, and it's just the luck of the draw. I mean, a pitching coach, worst three letters to hear are UCL. So when you think about it that way, into it, like, it's just inevitable, which sucks. I mean, it really does. But I think if you can prolong it with your proper arm care, your proper recovery, your keeping those low days low and those high days high, focusing on your RPE that day, focusing on your sleep, hydration, nutrition. If you kind of get all those ducks in order, maybe you prolong, a potential injury happening. And then basically too, just kind of assessing. I think assessing, especially for young guys, when to ramp up. Like, we ramp our guys up, I want to say, like, late December, maybe late December, mostly early January. We start our bullpens, and I honestly get upset when I see our guys that hit their previous velo last summer in their first pen, because it's like, okay, like, you're bigger now, you're moving better, you're stronger. We know you're going to be here, but dude, way too early for this number. Like, way too early. And I mean, try telling a 16-year-old that, who is 87, 88, like, well, I want 90. It's like, well, of course, but just, again, trust the process, trust
Not
the
this
train.
week.
Exactly. And then it's like their first outing with high school. They're like, oh, I did well, but my arm hurts. It's like, well, now we got to take steps back again. So, like, to me, the biggest thing is, like, knowing when to ramp up and listening to your body. Because even, like I said about my back, I ignored my back. I was an idiot. Like, I was in excruciating pain, but just kind of said, I got to keep throwing. I got to keep going.
Yeah.
And just knowing when to limit intensity, knowing when to increase it, but at the same time, like, ramping up the right way.
Yeah. Yeah. No, um, I don't have the perfect answer either. I think I feel similarly about it as you do. Kind of what I've been talking to people about, at the major league level, and why I think it matters so much is at the youth level, is that
Mhm.
we have the number one predictor of future injuries, previous injury. And so the longer, when we've got these high school kids that had little league elbow when they were 11, well, from the time that they're 11 on, they're now at an increased risk of elbow injury all the way through high school, right? And then the kids in high school that have TJ, now they're not only at increased risk during college, but then in their professional career. Like, it just, when it keeps starting younger and younger, it just, that follows them from the rest of their career. And yeah, it doesn't mean they're going to get hurt. It's just like, statistically, you are now at a greater risk than everyone
Right.
else for a longer period of time.
Right.
Yeah, it's not any one thing. It's everything. Like, I've kind of been saying a lot. Like, we've got high school kids that are throwing big league velos with little league habits, and
Right.
they're up late, sleeping on the couch, eating Cheetos, and then just, like, not warming up. They don't have a good routine, and they go and pick up a ball and they're throwing 93, and it's like, okay, that's awesome, but, like, got to do this.
The
And we've
tires
seen
are
so
going to fall
many.
off at some
I
point.
know. And we've seen so many kids this year that, they built up, they did a great job with their clubs in the winter, and they built up to we had a lot of kids that built up to two sets of 25 live ABs, like 50-ish pitches plus warm-ups, which is like a good number. Then they go, we had spring break right in between the end of club stuff and then the start of
Right.
high school, which is like, we need to ban that. That can't happen again in the future.
Right.
And then they go out and they throw 70 pitches in their first game, and it's like, oh, my arm hurts. And it's like, well, yeah, you threw a bullpen with 50 at a,
Right.
probably, no matter how hard you were trying to throw hard, like, not competitive juice isn't throwing as warm as inside, outside in the cold, throw more pitches at a higher intent level. And is it any shock to you that your arm hurts? Like,
Right.
what are we doing?
Exactly. Exactly. And I mean, it's unfortunate. It sucks. We play in Wisconsin. I mean, this is the
Yep.
first week. I mean, May 1st is the first consecutive days we had, 65 plus, where, most of our high school guys are like, oh, I can't wait to throw this week. But for the last month, they were trying to produce that same velo in the cold. I mean, knock on wood, nothing's happening, but it's like at the same time, we got to be smart. And I think another thing for young guys is like communicate. I mean, I remember when I was in high school, if my coach told me to throw, I was throwing. Even if I didn't, if I had my C plus, B minus stuff that day, I was still, all right, I'm going to throw. It's like, just communicate. I mean, and I think having a pitch count too, especially when we were just talking about ramping up, like that first start of the year, cap it at 30, maybe 35.
Yeah.
If you had the yeah, exactly. If you had the perfect ramp up, but you got to listen to your body.
That's what we're like. It needs to be less. And then I feel like I'm a broken record. I'm like, it needs to be less than whatever your last bullpen was, like your first in-game start. Like, it cannot be more. So yeah, well, I'd love to kind of hear, just pick your brain on a couple little things around this, kind of just things that you've changed to try to help players stay healthy. So, kind of big picture, like off season, are you a proponent of throwing somewhat year round, or taking like a true time where we're taking ball out of kids' hands and like truly letting them rest the arms?
I think it depends on the athlete. Like I was one that I really never stopped throwing. I never really took a break. I obviously, like that last game of the summer in July, I'm not, throwing a pen 4 days later in August. Yeah. I think a break is needed. A break is good if needed. I mean, if you threw 150 innings from the spring and the summer, like, okay, maybe take a 4-week, 6-week break. Don't even, and I think it's good for the mind too. Sometimes, like, just get away from baseball. Reset yourself, decompose. Really just relax. Versus other guys that finished their summer season and they got fall ball the first month of September. Some of them are like, I'm going to keep throwing. All right, but we're going to limit intensity for this month. Like we're going to go back to those. We're going to kind of have that extra month of the off season and just kind of reiterate our title tank drills or our med ball drills and kind of just keep the train moving without having to play and without really increasing that intensity. So we give the arm a break. But on the other side of the spectrum, a lot of guys like to keep throwing, which if you're going to play fall ball, you should throw throughout August as well. Because there's a handful of guys that show up to fall ball. And my first question is, how's your arm? When's the last time you threw? Oh, our last game. Well, dude, that was 6 weeks ago.
That's not it.
And now you're on the mound right now. Well, I feel good. No, get off the mound. Get out of here. It's just like, and hate me, love me, whatever. I'm trying to look out for your body, look out for your arm, because in the job that we're in, like, we're responsible for these kids' careers. And if I'm going to tell you something you don't want to hear, sorry, tough luck. We can't. First of all, it's fall ball. We don't need to be ripping a bullpen on September 1st.
Yeah.
So
yeah, no, I think that's really good advice. I mean, I see it both ways. Like if people ask me, I'm usually like, I think the younger the player, the more they need to like take a true period at some point in the year that we take the ball out of their hands, like for a while. The older high school players, like depending on what their goals are, it just needs to align with their goals. It's like, yeah, if you really need to develop your velocity to get a shot to reach your goals, like you might not have time to take the ball out of your hand, but like maybe we need to look on like, is fall ball necessary for you? Like, could we take a longer deload and then do velocity stuff over the fall and winter and then kind of deload again before we ramp up? Like, I just think there's different ways to go about it, but it needs to be organized and aligned with your goals and not just like, oh yeah, I'm going to not throw for 3 weeks. Like, well, how does that line up with like what you're going to do the rest of your year? And yeah, I think there's no perfect answer, but that's kind of typically what I say is like the younger the player, the more like go play a different sport for at least one season. Like just get away from it. If you're a middle schooler, even sometimes a freshman, like as we get older, like, okay, we can talk about it a little differently, but it just needs to be aligned with those goals.
Absolutely. Completely agree.
Okay. Well, where do you align on, like drill work with like kind of plyo ball type work with just good old fashioned long toss and catch play? And how do you divvy up a pitcher's throws or kind of make tweaks and recommendations, between those two, sometimes competing philosophies?
So I think too, like it's drill wise. I mean, there's 100 drills you can give out with med ball, title tank, and the same goes for lifting. Like I said earlier, like every athlete's different. So like I try to base drill work on the stuff they struggle with. I mean, if you're struggling with something and we're gonna hammer it out, we're gonna make you uncomfortable. But like you said, like that one guy doing the 10 toes drill, like I'm a big 10 toes drill guy. Like I love him. It just allows the arm to work freely. And then there's some guys that have a really good arm path. We don't really need to spend time with that 10 toes. We can do more lower half stuff. So I think it depends on the athlete. I try to really replicate med ball. So like when a guy sees me, we'll start in our plyo wall area. We'll do med ball work, title tank, mobility, and I'll kind of get an idea based on video, um, like what they're struggling with, and then their catch play drills will kind of work around what we did back there, kind of reiterate those movement patterns, reiterate, um, the stuff we need to work on. There's no really right way to play catch. I mean, having a plan, right? Like getting your drill work done, having a target, stuff like that. But it drives me nuts when the guys just throw just to get loose. It's like, oh, we're talking halfway through, we're just playing catch, we're missing our target. Like that kind of stuff, it irks me a little bit. But when we're able to, like you said earlier, have that plan, um, reiterate those drills, and like I said, dry programming gets stale, right? So after 4 or 5 weeks, I'll get feedback from my guys. They're like, all right, I got the rocker drill down. Can we try something else? Sure. If you're ready, then we can move on. But we always got to be kind of chasing that next short-term goal to get to that long goal.
Yeah, no, I love that philosophy because I think it's just something I hear about. I hear a lot of like some kids that just come in and be like, I don't like plyo balls. I'm like, okay, well that's fine, but like, there is a purpose to it. Then there's other kids that won't do anything but
Right.
throw plyo balls till they get on the mound and pitch. And I'm like, I don't love that. Like I still think that there is like a purpose to long toss and like to build up some like having just a good catch play routine for your warm-ups and to build your arm strength. I'm like, you actually throw a baseball. Like we don't compete with a plyo ball. Like
Right.
think that they're like I like kids using them in warm-ups and or maybe they're low days or like I think there's I don't know. I think like everything in baseball, it's like there seems like right now there's like two camps. It's like all plyo balls and no catch play, or like only catch play, no drills. And I'm like, I don't see I wish there was more people that could find a way to like kind of be in that middle ground where it's like, yeah, there's drills followed by like just a good old fashioned like long toss routine that on with specific goals throughout the course of the week.
Right. Absolutely. Like plyo balls came out, I think they really started to skyrocket when I was in college. I want to say like 2016, 2017. I mean, even myself, like I'm like, oh, if I throw this big black green ball, I'm gonna build arm strength. I'm gonna throw harder. Well, no, I actually got hurt doing it because my reverse throws, I'm yanking my head, I'm just like throwing it to throw it. So I try to tell my guys like plyo balls are a stretching tool. Like if you're on a high intent day that day and you get to your fourth, fifth plyo routine and you're starting to feel good, okay, increase intensity a little bit, but those drills we do back there are going to set us up for our catch play. Our catch play is going to set us up for our bullpen day or our live day, whatever it may be.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know. I wish more people could listen to that and kind of find that middle ground because I just think it makes too much sense.
Absolutely. They're a
Hey,
great tool.
last
They just have to be done the right way.
yeah. Last question on the injury front, and then I'll stop peppering you with things that no one wants to talk about. How like with your pitchers in the they're going to pitch for you all summer. What do you see? Like, what would you recommend as a high school workload? Like, how should they? I mean, we kind of said start 30, 35 pitches. How would you suggest they ramp up, and where would you like to see them kind of be capped at from like a throwing volume per week or per game as a pitch count wise?
Yeah, great question. So I think a lot of it, I think the root of it is communication. I mean, most of my guys will I'll get a phone call right after their start. First question I ask, how'd you feel? I don't even care about their stat line. I'm like, how'd you feel? How's your arm? Especially a guy coming off, like I know you guys work with Roventini. He's coming off a UCL sprain a little bit. He's feeling really good right now, but it's the first thing I ask him. It's like, okay, well, I threw 40 pitches today. All right, cool. You feel good? Yep. okay, next week we can probably go for 45, 50. I mean, depending on the game. But just communicate with your coach how you're feeling.
Yeah.
You know, if we can stay, you know, you're in high school now, I don't see you as much, but if you can stay on the plan and just kind of and be a good teammate too, like continue to work for your team, but you know, listen to your body on what the right intensity is for that day. Ideally, you're going to be set up pretty well coming for the summer. And I just think too, like I said, the communicating, having that for me, having that instant feedback so I can hear, okay, he felt not so good today. Okay, we're going to go in the throwing program. We're going to change his long toss day to a little bit less intensity, just kind of give him a break. But I think constantly having that open window of communication sets the throwing coach, sets the lifting coach up for what we need to, you know, what we need to attack next.
Yeah. No, I think that's awesome. I've been, and I'd just be curious on your perspective on our recommendations. I've really been encouraging kids that are going to play travel ball over the summer to sort of try to stay around once they build up appropriately, like that's 70 to 80 pitches, and to stay out of the, I'm going to throw a complete game at 100 pitches just because the rules say I can. It just feels like doing that week in and week out and then going right into the summer ball and doing it like, and just keep throwing that. It just, by the end of the year, ends up being cumulatively too much. And whether that results in injuries or just like decreased performance come July and August, like it just feels like it really catches up to them. Do you see that on your end? Do you have like a sweet spot that you're like, there's really no reason to throw more than this right now?
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, I think early high school season, like no reason first week of conference, that starter shouldn't be throwing 80 plus. Like
Yep.
I don't, you know, how good he feels is whatever, how good he feels, like it shouldn't, you got to understand, we're not looking for a number right now. We're looking for a number in July, a number, you know, when it matters around scouts. So whatever you got to do to get there, but just don't burn your bullets in March. Don't burn your bullets in April. Still compete, still set your team up for a good spot. But,
Yeah.
you know, you go 4 innings, you're at 60 pitches and you were capped at 55 that day, cut it, shut it down. You did your work. Okay. Now let the next guy come in. And, you know, we're again, like I kind of always reiterate this, we're looking at that long-term goal, not so much like what we need to do right now. But like I said, overuse is a huge thing. I mean, especially arms. I mean, you're playing from March to really early August. I mean, that's a lot of throwing. Especially if you're a starter once a week, that's a lot of throws in that time span. So like I said earlier, just having that communication, having that knowing your body on what's working and what's not will, you know, continue to set you up the right way.
Yeah. No, I think that's awesome. Well, I know you're super busy and have a full day ahead of you. So thank you very much for taking the time. Where can anyone that listens to this go to learn more about you or get in touch with you online?
Okay, so I have my Instagram, TP3 Performance, and then our website for our strength and conditioning page is riseperformance.org. .org though, because a lot of guys go .com and it's something different. Riseperformance.org. That's ran out of our facility here. I'm running the floor there. So yeah, I mean, I would love to, if anybody's interested, would love to communicate and set them up.
Yeah, awesome. We will get those in the show notes. So if you want to see more about what Ty's doing too, or get in touch with him, just check out the show notes for this episode. And Ty, thank you so much for sharing your insights and tips for people. And we will see you guys on the next episode.
Well, I appreciate you having me, man. It was fun.